Cannabis Cowboys.
In the last episode of Cannabis Cowboys, we explored the rift that ran through Juicy Fields in July 2022. The authorities were on the company's back, investors couldn't access their money, and there was no medical cannabis to speak of, and Juicy Fields looked like a scam, a ponzi.
And while all that was happening, it seemed like war had broken out between two tribes within Juicy Fields, with each side accusing the other of criminal activity. And what's weird is that they did it all in public. You might expect scammers to go underground, but not Juicy Fields.
In this episode of Cannabis Cowboys, you're in for a whole lot of surprises.
I'm Nicolas Martin.
I'm Andreas Becker.
This is Cannabis Cowboys.
Cannabis Cowboys.
A story about big dreams,
Juicy money,
and never-ending hype. Brought to you by DW. Episode 6, Juicy Nobility. Before we jump into the details of this episode of Cannabis Cowboys, just a quick recap. Juicy Fields had a public-facing shopfront, a website called JuicyFields.io. It was the platform where investors could buy virtual cannabis plants.
And then there were 3 companies, one in Berlin, one in Amsterdam, and one near Zurich in Switzerland. The old or original Juicy Fields was the company in Berlin with the website. The companies in Amsterdam and near Zurich were created later, so we are calling them the new Juicy Fields. The Zurich company owned the one in Amsterdam, so we can safely say that Zurich was the center of power in the new Juicy Fields. So we decided to visit Juicy Fields' Zurich office. It was located in an area of Switzerland that just smells of money.
We're now driving in a rental car, which we rented in Zurich, and we are driving on the road to Pfeffikon. It's a beautiful scenery. You can see the mountains, Lake Zurich, and the so-called Gold Coast. That's where the moneyed people live, the rich people enjoying the sunny side of the lake. And you can see people are well off here. And this area is the seat of JuicyFields-Saga.
I actually expect it to be a letterbox company. But maybe they have a real office there. Maybe we meet some real people. Let's see. And let's ask them where the money has gone.
Nice. When we arrived at the official company address, it was hard to find any reference to Juicy Fields at all.
No sign of money, no glitz, no glamour, just a drab office building next to a busy highway access road. Grey cement, 4 floors, company signs and letterboxes. Dozens of letterboxes.
So here we got letterboxes.
Yeah, letterboxes and Juicy Fields-Saga. 3rd floor.
We came unannounced, having tried to make an appointment unsuccessfully. We never got an answer. But when we saw that row of letterboxes, we had a feeling we would not get an answer here either. Guten Tag, hallo.
Guten Tag. Wir sind von der Deutschen Welle.
Inside the building, there was a reception with a lady doing secretarial work for the dozens of companies that rented office spaces there and had letterboxes in the business center. The receptionist told us that she hadn't seen anybody from Juicy Fields for months.
Was sieht man?
Plus minus,
Ja,
isn't it?
in den Zeitungen
Ja,
stehen ja
ja.
die Sachen. Das ist das, was wir sehen. Ja.
She told us she had heard in the news that Juicy Fields may have been involved in a scam, but that she didn't know more than that. It was August 2022, about a month after e-grower investors had been blocked from accessing their Juicy Fields accounts and their money.
Herzlichen Dank dir trotzdem.
Dankeschön.
Bitte schön,
Ciao.
schönen Tag.
Ja, also, tschüss.
Our attempt to visit the Juicy Fields offices in Switzerland brought up nothing. So we thought we'd try our luck at another place nearby, a place that was way fancier than the drab business center. We headed to the castle of Knonau.
Oh,
Ja, Knonau. Cool, ich hab's.
the route is being calculated.
Alright, let's go.
Just a few months earlier, at the start of 2022, the castle of Knonau was listed as the official address for JuicyFields, Switzerland, before it moved to the business center.
Now turn half right and then turn left.
Knonau Castle is our destination.
Knonau Castle, and in this castle resides
Our Majesty.
the Prince, Jörg Wolfgang, Prince of Saxony, Gotha, and something else. We have to look up the complete title.
It's so long that you can't actually remember.
The full title is very long indeed. His Royal Highness Jörg Wolfgang, Prince of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, Duke of Saxony. Wow. And if you check your Wikipedia, you learn, as we did, that members of that particular royal family had sat on thrones in Belgium, Bulgaria, Mexico, Portugal, and even the United Kingdom.
That's some legacy. But we didn't drive to Knonau just to meet a prince with a fancy name. We went there because we found it interesting that a prince would want to get into the cannabis business. He held high office at JuicyFields, Switzerland, as vice president of the company's board of directors.
Even after JuicyFields had left the castle and changed its address to that drab business center in February 2022, the prince kept his position. We assumed he was still the vice president when we visited. What we didn't know was that on that very day, a note had been published in Switzerland's official commercial register announcing that the prince had resigned as vice president.
Yeah, like in the case of the JuicyField AG, we tried to contact them, but we never heard any response. So that's why today we just ring the bell and see if the prince opens himself and if he's willing to talk to us.
Yeah, you can see here the ideas of non-aristocratic people. First, does a castle have a bell? Second, does the prince open the door himself?
Well, big question. We will see, yeah.
You have reached your destination.
All right, there we are.
There we are.
Let's go.
Knonau Castle is beautiful. But it does not look like a fairy tale, Disney kind of castle. It's more like a manor, a big three-storied house built in the 16th century. On one of the upper floors, 2 windows were open. The castle is surrounded by a lawn, majestic trees, and a low wall. We saw all that from the other side of a big metal gate. We did not see a doorbell.
Let's see.
On the compound, but outside the wall that surrounds the castle, there were several houses. They seemed to have no connection to the castle. We talked to a man and a woman who live in one of the houses, and they told us that they rarely saw the prince and hardly ever spoke to him.
We decided to give the prince another call. We cannot reveal who gave us his number, but as you'll see later, it is indeed the prince's personal phone number.
This phone number does not have a voicemail.
We also sent a text message, but didn't get a reply.
Thank you for your understanding.
So we strolled around the premises, a bit undecided about what to do next, and came to a house that seemed to be connected to the wall surrounding the castle, like a guest house or a carriage house at the manor.
As we came closer, we heard the sound of a TV inside.
And we saw that this house did have a bell.
I heard the television was on and now it's off.
The TV sounds inside suddenly stopped, but nobody answered the door. No prince, no servant, nobody. We drive back to Zurich, disappointed that our trip was in vain. No luck at the business center and no luck at the castle. No luck meeting anyone at JuicyFields Switzerland office anywhere.
But our visit did not go unnoticed. 2 hours later, we got a call from a lawyer who said they represented the prince and told us to stop snooping around. That same evening, the prince's lawyers also wrote a warning letter to DW's legal department. The prince, his lawyer said, has nothing to do with the investor platform JuicyFields.io.
We do not know whether or not this is true, whether the prince had links to the platform or not. But it's a fact that the prince used to be the vice president of a Swiss company called Juicy Fields, and that his castle was for a period of 3 months the official address of the company.
The castle also served as the address of another company that has nothing to do with cannabis, a school of etiquette. It had its own homepage, and according to its imprint, the prince ran the school. Here's a quote from the website, voiced by one of our producers.
Among the indispensable requirements of a luxury lifestyle are impeccable manners and mastery of etiquette. The Knonau Castle Etiquette School provides training in manners, etiquette, art and culture with specific seminars at Knonau Castle.
The homepage features photos of the 16th century Knonau Castle, its artworks, gardens, and one of the prince, looking like a well-groomed man in his early 60s, smiling and standing next to a painting. Another organization that calls Knonau Castle its home is DMW Diplomats International, a non-governmental organization. DMW says it aims to prevent conflicts and crises, and that the prince is its chairman. They say they have no interest in making money. Here's a quote from the website.
We are in no way materially oriented and free from any greed. Anyone who feels such inclinations is not welcome here.
So at first glance, it's all perfectly respectable. A prince, a castle, diplomatic circles, etiquette. It just begs the question. How did this man become vice president of the board of Juicy Fields, a company that pretended to trade in cannabis?
All was not what it seemed. In fact, we soon learned that the prince was not a prince at all. It started with a quote on the website for his school of etiquette. It was from Shakespeare's Hamlet. We know what we are, but not what we may be.
That got us thinking. And then we found an article in a Swiss newspaper from more than 20 years ago. It turns out the prince was not born a prince. The title? The Wannabe Prince of Knonau. The article claimed that Jörg Wolfgang, the prince, did not belong to the royal house of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. So we checked with the royal house. It took a while, but they responded, in writing of course, and we have voiced their reply.
Jörg Wolfgang Ferdinand Luitpold, Prince of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, is a non-royal holder of the name. He has no connection with the House of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha. He's not known to us personally.
A non-royal holder of a royal title? We were confused.
The prince is a German citizen. And in Germany, aristocratic titles such as prince, count or duke don't have any legal significance. They are just part of a name. Anybody can acquire an aristocratic name through marriage or adoption.
But in the eyes of aristocratic families and their organizations, marriage or adoption does not make you part of the club. In their view, you cannot be truly noble if your father was a so-called commoner. There is a word for people who get their titles through marriage or adoption, Scheinadel, which roughly translates as fake nobility.
We are not judging. Becoming a prince through marriage or adoption does not automatically make you an imposter or a bad person. Then again, a royal title might help a person seem trustworthy or respectable, as though they come from good stock and have traditional values.
A search for his birth name revealed that the prince used to work as a banker and commodities expert for several well-known financial institutions before he took his position on the board of directors of Juicy Fields in Switzerland. So we assume he was knowledgeable about financial transactions.
But we were left wondering, how did he get involved with Juicy Fields in the first place? Put another way, how did a Berlin-based cannabis startup with little more than a website turn into a Swiss stock corporation, which is what it did by hooking up with the prince. The Swiss Register of Companies has at least some of the answers. Documents show that the Swiss stock corporation called JuicyFields AG was older than we thought. In fact, the company was way older than the original JuicyFields company in Berlin, and also older than the JuicyFields.io website. It had just had a different name and a different purpose before.
Before it became JuicyFields, the company was called Luxburg-Carolath Holding. And before that, it had yet another but similar name, Gräflich von Luxburgsche Verwaltung, which roughly translates as Count Luxburg Management Company.
Don't confuse Luxburg with Luxembourg. The latter is a small European country. The Luxburg company, on the other hand, was named after the Counts of Luxburg, an aristocratic family in Germany and Switzerland that traces its roots all the way back to the 13th century.
Count Stefan von Luxburg was the president of the board of directors of the company, and Count Friedrich von Luxburg headed its German branch in Berlin.
The Counts of Luxburg ran a whole web of companies that formed the Luxburg-Carolath Group, or LC Group for short. Most of their ventures were about asset management and finance, and at least one of them, LC Med, tried to get into the medical cannabis business.
If you look at the Luxburg-Carolath business card, you'll see two coat of arms, followed by the words "Tradition since 1329." The message is, old money means continuity, stability, respectability.
But on the 22nd of November 2021, Luxburg-Carolath Holding changed its name to JuicyFields. With a stroke of a pen, JuicyFields was now associated with this old money Swiss stock corporation, with a share capital of 5 million Swiss francs and a castle as its headquarters.
From a website in Berlin to a castle in Switzerland. How did that happen? Well, the old JuicyFields company in Berlin, Juicy Grow, had signed a contract with the Luxburg Counts to acquire a stake in their company.
The Counts confirmed the sale. Here's an extract of a company statement released in August 2022. We have voiced it for this podcast.
It is correct that representatives of the internet platform JuicyFields.io acquired shares in the Switzerland-based LC Holding AG in October 2021. In the course of the desired cooperation, LC Holding AG changed its company name to JuicyFields AG.
But the statement went on to say that the old JuicyFields in Berlin had failed to fulfill its contractual obligations. They did not pay for a majority stake in the Swiss company, and they did not invest further to help the company expand its business, according to the statement by the Luxburg Counts.
Neither the purchase nor the investment amount has been paid in accordance with the contract. Therefore, the LC Group withdrew from the intended cooperation and the purchase agreement.
Again, this looks like a classic example of what we've called the JuicyFields gap, the gap between two versions of a story.
We cannot assess the truth of the above statements. One thing is sure, though. Legally, the Luxburg-Carolath Holding had changed its name to JuicyFields. So there was a wedding of sorts. We are not even sure there was a honeymoon, but very soon their coupling had turned sour.
So let's take a closer look at the two counts of Luxburg. Count Stefan von Luxburg, the younger of the two, was born in the late 1960s. He was on the board of directors of the Luxburg-Carolath Holding Company years before it became JuicyFields Switzerland. And when it did, Count Stefan became the president of its board.
Count Stefan was also on the board of the German subsidiary of Count Luxburg Management Company. Another board member there was Count Friedrich, who was 5 years older than Stefan.
We were told that of the two counts, Count Friedrich seemed to have been far more active. On paper, he did not have any official position at JuicyFields AG in Switzerland. But our sources were convinced that Count Friedrich was the one who controlled the company.
For example, Willy van der Merwe, who joined JuicyFields as CEO in June 2022 and stayed for a month. We have voiced what he told us by email.
JuicyFields AG was run by one person, Friedrich von Luxburg, who attended all meetings and appeared to have the final decision on all corporate matters.
Thomas Stieger, the ex-banker who worked for JuicyFields in Switzerland and whom we've met in previous episodes, had the same impression. Based on countless meetings with Count Friedrich, both personal and via Zoom, Stieger told us in early 2023 that the Count made all the decisions at the new JuicyFields.
Count Friedrich was 100% in control of the two legal entities, JuicyFields Holding BV and JuicyFields AG in Switzerland, so the Dutch and the Swiss companies.
To be clear, these are statements that two former JuicyFields managers made independently of each other. These are not our statements. We asked Count Friedrich for comment.
Count Friedrich denied the accusations. In particular, he told us via email that he had never been in charge of JuicyFields, neither the Dutch nor the Swiss company, and that he had never attended even a single meeting of these companies.
Let's look at the share purchase agreement, the contract that turned the Count's Luxburg-Carolath holding into the Swiss JuicyFields company. Count Stefan signed the contract, but only as a representative of the seller. And the seller was, according to a leaked document of the contract, a company with an address in Venezuela. Of the two counts in our story, Count Friedrich is the one with close ties to Venezuela. Let's have a look at him and hold on tight for his full name.
Friedrich Ulrich Maximilian Johann, Count of Luxburg, Prince of Carolath-Beuthen and Prince of Schöneich-Carolath.
Okay, let's just call him Count Friedrich. There's not much information online about his professional background. An e-book published in 2003 describes him as a German-Venezuelan economist and philanthropist. In Germany, his business activities include various companies in the Luxburg-Carolath group, and in Venezuela, he is the president of the Luxburg-Carolath Foundation.
That's a charity which, according to its website, has existed for more than 80 years and supports children, indigenous people and nature conservation projects in Venezuela. The charity's website features photos. Count Friedrich himself, in his late 50s, with a full grey beard and a determined look on his face, full of drive and vision. There's also black and white images of his ancestors, along with short texts about them. Here's a passage about Count Friedrich's father.
Jörg Otto Erich Johann, Count of Luxburg, a great-nephew of Karl Ludwig, Count of Luxburg.
So there seems to be some connection to Karl Ludwig, who descended from Swiss nobility and was a well-known diplomat in the early 1900s.
When we found out that the prince at Knonau Castle was not born a prince, we decided to check up on the counts as well. We asked the German Nobility Archives, an institution that is regarded as an authority on nobility in German-speaking countries. The answer surprised us once again.
The genealogy of the Counts of Luxburg contains neither a Friedrich Ulrich nor a Stefan Ludwig.
So the counts were fake nobility as well? What we can say is that Count Friedrich was born under a different name. We have seen the official documents.
So many elements in the JuicyFields story are about make-believe. Fake cannabis, fake investments, and now fake aristocrats. Maybe all this doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's just a gut feeling that turns out to be wrong. But it did make us want to dig deeper. What made either side think it was a good idea to hook up?
To us, it looks like both sides had something the other side needed. The people running the JuicyFields.io website needed help with banking. Our research suggests that there were allegations of money laundering as far back as early 2021, and that led to police investigations.
For the people at JuicyFields.io, the Luxburg counts and their web of companies must have looked appealing. They had a functioning organizational structure and expertise in finance.
And to the Luxburg counts and their companies, JuicyFields.io, with its thousands of investors, might have looked like a good cow to milk. The Juicy Fields website generated a constant stream of money, but they needed help with everything else. Help that the LC Group could provide for a share of the profits.
It's unclear to us whether the Luxburg site knew how Juicy Fields got its money, or whether they didn't want to know. It just seems there were two pieces of a puzzle that fit together, until they lost trust in each other and the two tribes emerged and we saw a split through the whole operation.
We had lots of questions for the new Juicy Fields, the Prince, the two counts and their LC network of companies. And we would have loved to hear their side of the story, but they never agreed to a conversation up to this point. So we sent them a list of questions. We asked them why they changed the name of their Swiss company into Juicy Fields, even though the other side did not keep their promises.
We asked them why they collaborated with the old Juicy Fields and what they got in return.
We asked them for proof that they were indeed tricked, as they had claimed, by the people running the old Juicy Fields and its investment platform.
To these and other questions, we did not receive answers. First, the lawyers representing the two counts and their companies let the deadline pass without a reply. Later, Count Friedrich denied all accusations and told us that he had nothing to do with Juicy Fields. Count Stefan, on the other hand, denied any wrongdoings and said he couldn't answer many questions because of ongoing police investigations.
A spokesperson for LC Med, a company dealing in medical cannabis that is part of the Count's LC holding of companies, said they could not comment due to ongoing investigations, but might do so at a later date. He referred us to an older press statement from which we have quoted in this episode.
The Prince, at least, replied to us directly. In January 2023, he sent us an email. He wrote that after he was informed of suspicions of money laundering at Juicy Fields, he had immediately resigned from his post and the Swiss company's board of directors. Since then, he said, he held no position at the company, nor did he own any shares. We have voiced the Prince's conclusion.
I am neither qualified nor authorized to provide you with the requested information, but I am, of course, very much interested in seeing that the facts of the case are fully clarified.
So, what do we have until now? The Prince is not a real prince. The counts are not real counts. But they and everybody else at the new Juicy Fields and the LC group of companies claim to be really innocent. They say they had nothing to do with the JuicyFields.io website, nothing to do with a scam, a ponzi or money laundering.
Before we can assess whether there's any truth to their statements, we have to look at the people they're pointing their fingers at, the group that supposedly makes up the old Juicy Fields. All we have are unsubstantiated allegations and information. A few names and photos, some telephone numbers, and scans of Russian passports.
Tough call, especially given the current political situation with Russia's war in the Ukraine, which makes researching in Russia all but impossible.
But we were lucky and got some help.
Help from somebody we never expected to hear from. Somebody with knowledge of the inner workings of Juicy Fields.
So get ready to join us as we jump into the next rabbit hole of the Juicy Fields-Saga.
Get ready for episode 7 of Cannabis Cowboys, Matryoshka Dolls.
Cannabis Cowboys is a DW production, researched, written and presented by us,
Andreas Becker
and Nicolas Martin.
Our editor was Zulfikar Abani.
Audio editing and mixing by Simon Berghahn. Sound design, Warner Poland.
The executive producer was Judith Hartl.
Special thanks to Kate Laycock, Keith Walker, Sam Baker, Sarah Steffen, Ineke Mules, Nick Martin, Neil King, Zulfikar Abani, Anke Raspa and Grzegorz Szymanowski.
Additional thanks to Henrik Böhme, Thomas Neufeld and the whole DW business team.
The cover was designed by Ilona Wendt and Nora Charlotte Tom. If you read about Cannabis Cowboys in a podcast newsletter, that's thanks to Sam Baker.
Boran Oeser took care of our promotion on social media and Christian Kühne of our distribution.
Legal advice, Tobias Würkert and Thomas Gademann. If you'd like to send us comments and feedback, send us an email to cannabiscowboys@dw.com.
And we are constantly looking for new leads in this story, so if you have any information regarding Juicy Fields, we would be grateful for your help. Get in touch and send us an email to cannabiscowboys@dw.com.
If you like this podcast, hit subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a comment on your favorite podcast platform.
Thanks for listening.